Welcome to Christian Warrior Training. My name is Keith. I'm on the road, but I wanted to take some time out to talk to you about my predictions for 2025 and church safety. I want to talk about all the things that I think that churches are going to have to face in 2025 when it comes to safety issues. Terrorism tops the list by far, but there are some more common things that you're going to have to worry about on that day to day. So I'm going to talk about it all. I'm going to end it with terrorism. So if that's all you want to listen to and that's all you're worried about, which there's more than that you should worry about, but if that's what you're worried about, fast forward to that section. But first, let's talk about the top things that you're most likely have to deal with. Look, property crime, somebody breaking into your church, that's the number one thing that's going to occur to churches around the United States. The best way to avert that is just to have a burglar alarm and a fire alarm and a 4K video system. Now look, if money is a problem in your church, that burglar alarm and fire alarm are your priorities, okay? But by far, that's going to be the biggest problem, the day-to-day problem that most churches are going to have to deal with. If you get my crime newsletter, the biggest crime outside of property crime that we see in churches that I think is going to increase exponentially is sexual abuse by clergy and volunteers. I hate seeing this, but this is like honestly the number one crime that I see come up week by week. There is not a week that has gone by last year where there was not somebody arrested for sexually assaulting minors or vulnerable adults, those going through divorces, substance abuse issues, elderly, stuff like that. But children are the number one target. The perpetrators almost always are going to be pastors, ministers, other people that are high up in the church, youth ministers. I do think that this is going to increase exponentially. And the best way to prohibit something like this from happening in your church, number one, is background checks. A lot of you are not doing background checks, which I don't understand, but you'll see in that weekly crime bulletin that I do over at christianwarriortraining.com on Saturdays, you're going to see several incidents where the minister was a convicted felon, had prior sex offenses, or something that would have come up that would have let you know that that person should not be in a position of trust. Background checks, and then also the establishing a two-adult rule, meaning that nobody should be alone with vulnerable populations. That would be your children, substance abusers, stuff like that. There should always be another person in the room, always. I think you should also provide mandatory training for your people on how to recognize sexual predators. Now, look, just to be clear, sexual predators come to churches as volunteers or as ministers, knowing that they're going to have a huge population to take advantage of, and they take advantage of our nature of forgiving. And also, churches have a habit of burying problems. Now, the Bible is very clear about justice for victims, and burying a sexual assault allegation in your church is not something that is good or that is something that is biblically correct. Another thing that you're seeing an increase of is politically driven vandalism. These are incidents where people are upset about Israel attacking Hamas and all this stuff going on in the Middle East. They're using that as or even abortion or something like that. And they're attacking churches by vandalism or something like that. So the best way to make sure that you don't have a politically driven violent vandalism act at your church is by having that burglar alarm, because sometimes when they break a window or something like that, it's going to set the burglar alarm off. Also a 4K video system, the 4K video system, so we can identify the perpetrators. A lot of times a lot of you live in communities where the police are going to publicize the picture of the vandal, and people will come in and report that person, and we can find them and bring them to justice. All right, on to the stuff that most of you are worried about, which is active shooters followed by terrorism. Now look, the active shooter stuff, you're more likely to use a Band-Aid than your gun at your church. You're more likely to be a victim of a burglary. You're more likely to have a sexual assault at your church than you are to have a terrorist event or an active shooter. And a lot of you are spending more time worrying about that than you are about the sexual abuse issue. And personally, I think you should worry about all of them, but giving more credence to sexual assaults, vandalisms, burglaries, stuff like that. And then in your spare time, get ready for active shooter and terrorism events. I just want to be clear on that. Now, look, my last video that I put out, I talked about since we raised the alert level on October 3rd of 24, I raised it to severe. I did that because there were indicators showing that there was going to be an increase in politically driven active shooters and terrorist events. Now, since then, in that video, I put out all of the stuff that's happened since then. The biggest ones was an active shooter at a Christian school where multiple children were shot. Several were killed, including teachers. And then another one in California where a man was upset. He was mentally ill, but upset about stuff happening in the Middle East. And he shot 2 kindergartners. And he somehow made it to the bathroom with nobody catching him. It's crazy. I did debrief on that particular incident. I think you should go back and look at it to see how you can prevent something like that from happening at your school. But I do think that there's going to be an increase in active shooter events at Christian schools and at churches. And I think you need to be ready for that. The best thing that you can do to get ready for that right now is to train your safety teams in situational awareness, lockdown procedures, and evacuation planning. You should be conducting regular active shooter drills that are tailored to your church's layout. Now, we do that once a year at my church. We have 4 campuses right now. We're expanding. We'll have 6 shortly. Every year we go to a new campus and we do active shooter training there. You want to develop an emergency communication system to alert staff and volunteers quickly. One of the things that we have learned doing active shooter events is that if there's an active shooter in a certain part of the church, other people can't hear the gunshots going off. And so we need a way to alert everybody about what's going on. And of course, you want to partner with law enforcement to conduct security assessments and to come over and help you. The best compliment I get is every time I do active shooter training, I always invite law enforcement to tell them to come by. The beat officer always comes by, and this has happened twice now where the cop has shown up and said and told me, you're giving better active shooter training than we get at our agency. And I always invite that department to come into our active shooter training to do stuff just for them. And nobody ever takes me up on it, but I put it out there for them. So those are the big things that you can do to get ready for those events. All right, the big one, terror-related events. Now, look, sorry, my situational awareness is making me look around. I'm in a parking lot, and all of a sudden I got a bunch of people around me. All right, never lose your situational awareness. All right, so our terror-related events, this is why you are here. There is a lot of geopolitical instability. There's a lot of domestic extremism that's fueling the increased risk. Our biggest issue is going to be lone wolf actors that have mental illness that hear ISIS's cry in order to attack Christian churches in the United States and synagogues. I know a lot of the Jewish community watches this as well. You guys are having the same problems we are. We're mutually exclusive here. They're going to attack us both. To be clear, ISIS came out and said that. Almost all of the active shooter events since ISIS has said that has been lone wolf actors that were crazy, that were acting out on that. And there's been multiples. And I've been reporting on all of them and debriefing all of them over at ChristianWarriorTraining.com. I put out more information over there, so you should be following me at ChristianWarriorTraining.com. I am censored on YouTube, and so a lot of the stuff I do over on Substack at ChristianWarriorTraining.com, I can't do over here, so make sure you follow me over there. If it would be nice, though, if you want to help the ministry that we're doing here, if you can do a paid subscription, I would appreciate it because it helps the ministry. But if you can't do it, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be free anyways. All right. I do expect that things are going to increase. I just put out a video. It was a re-release of a video of my interview with a Joint Terrorism Task Force agent that investigated Hezbollah. He has some great information about Hezbollah in America. One of the things that now there's 30,000 Hezbollah agents in the United States right now, most of them here illegally. He talks about how they operate, where they're at. He talks about when their go signal is. And look, their go signal, they had 2, was the death of their leader, Nasrallah. I think that was his name. If he died and we went to war with Iran, then all 30,000 of those were going to do multiple attacks all across the United States. There have been clear indications that there is going to be a terrorist attack in the very near future that is going, sorry, I keep looking around. This is my situational awareness. Now, look, just to be clear, multiple intelligence analysts have been telling us that there is going to be a terrorist attack in the very near future that is going to be worse than 9/11. Almost everybody, including myself, thinks that it's going to be an October 7th type attack, meaning that how Hamas invaded Israel and attacked everybody over there. It's going to be a similar incident here. They're going to go to, like, let's say on a Sunday morning, they're going to attack, let's say, 10 churches in one geographical location, kill as many people as possible. And they're all, because there's no way that a police agency can deal with even one, let alone 10. And then at least 9 of those cells are going to escape. Maybe one might die in a shootout with police, and then they're going to leave, and then they're going to go somewhere else and do it again, and they're just going to keep doing that over and over and over again. Or this might involve thousands of attacks all across America, all at the same time, overwhelming resources. It's very apparent that that's what's going to happen. That's the leading theory right now, and we should be ready for that. So the biggest thing is, don't lock down your church. Don't turn it into a bunker. Okay, we don't want the bunker mentality. Don't stand out in front of your church with an AR-15. Okay, like that's going to churn believers away. People that they need Christ more than ever. And if they decide, like, today's the day I'm going to go to church and I'm going to learn about Christ, and you're staying there with an AR-15 doing bag checks and putting people through a magnetometer, that may make them turn around. And the best way I like to put it is, look, it's the New Year's. Everybody's New Year's resolution is to go to the gym, and you've never been to the gym before, and you walk in, and how intimidating it is, and how you just don't feel right when you're in there. And just imagine if everybody started judging you on how you lifted, like you would leave and not come back, versus the gym that you walk in and somebody sees that you're new and they're like, hey, do you want to learn how to use that? I would love to. Hey, let me help you. That's what you want, right? So you're just going to have to work harder as a security team member in welcoming those people in and just using good discernment, right? So one of the biggest things that I'm worried about with these new attacks is them using drones to do surveillance or to launch an attack, meaning like you look at drone warfare right now, it's off the hook. Churches are not ready for the drone threat. I do have an article done on how churches can deal with drones at their church. I want to do an accompanying training video on it, and I'm just trying to find time to do that video on how to detect drones and how to deal with drones at a church. I also have another article done, and I want to do another video on how you can use drones as a force multiplier to detect problems at your church and to use it for surveillance and such. But the biggest thing is to make sure you have people stationed outside in the parking lot, because that's where problems pop off first, and they should be looking for drones. If you see a drone in the air, you should look and monitor it to see, does it have a payload or is it just doing surveillance? You need to figure that out, and you need to look at that. And once you see a drone in the air, don't shoot it out of the sky. Okay, it's not going to work. Dealing with drones is a whole separate issue that we're not going to cover in this video. But don't shoot it. It doesn't work like you think it does. Plus, it's illegal on top of that. And what goes up must come down. If you do see a drone, keep an eye on it. Alert everybody on your staff. Hey, there's a drone out here. We're worried about it. And then start putting people outside to be ready to pull people inside quickly to lock down the church, find the drone operator, something like that, right? You want to train your security team to identify pre-attack behaviors like repeated loitering, photography of the church area, what have you. I have free training on that. If you go over to christianwarriortraining.com, hit the courses tab or the training tab, it is, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like identifying threats at your church. If you take that class, it's all free. I don't charge for this. How I cover my costs is people doing a paid subscription for the newsletter. If you do that, that helps cover my costs. If you like that training and you have the extra money, I would appreciate it. But the training is free because I know that money is a barrier for people to get good training, and I don't want that to happen. So take that training. You want to establish interchurch communication with all your churches. If there's an attack at one church, then everybody should know about it right away. So all of our churches are hooked up on Signal. The Signal is an app that is encrypted end to end, where all the team leaders are on the same Signal app. If something were to occur, we can send a text message out saying, we just had an active shooter event. If a church in your geographical area, meaning like your city or like your valley, right, has a church attack, I suggest that you lock your church down until you find out if there are others, because remember, we're expecting to have multiple church attacks in multiple areas all at the same time. So you need to start talking to your, sorry, freaky dude walking by. You need to make sure that you talk to all your churches all at the same time. Make sure everybody is on the same page. And you just want to make sure you're seeing my PTSD kick in by totally watching these people. Sorry. You just want to make sure you talk to all the different churches all in your area. You should meet quarterly. We came up with just a random name for our group called Christian Applications Group. Doesn't really mean anything. It's just whatever. What do they do? Don't worry about it. We just meet and talk about things, right? And again, you just want to strengthen your relationship with your local law enforcement agency. Now, look, I want to talk about some biblical principles here. Okay. I think we need to have a balanced approach between faith and preparedness. Bible calls us to protect God's flock while we trust in his sovereignty. Now, Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 13 and 14 illustrate how God's people prepared for defense while remaining steadfast in his faith. Now, similarly, Jesus' words in Luke 22:36, where he acknowledged the need for practical preparation in the face of danger. Now, combining faith with action, you can create a secure environment that honors both God and his people. A lot of people say, just put your faith in God. I do. I put my faith in God, and I know God gave me these tools, this training, this platform right here to help prepare all of you. And I look at it this way. I have faith in God, and I'm showing, not that works gets you salvation. We all know that. I believe Jesus Christ died for my sins, but they're all my works for God, because I want to work for God, is to train all of you. And that is how I believe I am faithful. And by working hard and strengthening you where you can strengthen your churches and we can protect our people. I love nothing more than getting messages from you guys saying we had an incident and the training that we got over at Christian Warrior helped it from getting out of control, or it helped us resolve it quickly. I love getting those messages. I just want to leave you with Proverbs 22:3, where it says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Now, this compels us to be proactive in addressing risks and stewarding the tools and resources God has provided us to ensure the safety of all of our congregations. Now, when you leave here, we have a lot of threats in 2025. I do believe that this is going to be a more violent year for churches than 2024. With that said, when you leave here, I want you to pray for the safety of your church, the safety of your families, that all of these bad people are caught and brought to justice before they do anything to our church. The other thing I want you to remember is to remember your ABCs. Always be caring.